The NDP has launched a campaign to convince Tory backbenchers to vote against the government's election reform bill. They're even calling out Conservative MP Michael Chong, who has a private member's bill on democratic reform. The official opposition is saying that if he's a true Democrat, he'll vote against it. Not surprising. This is a political tactic, but will it work? And what does it mean about this Fair Elections Act? The NDP also want the government to call a free vote on the bill so that MPs can vote how they want to. Will the NDP sway any backbenchers should MPs be free to vote their conscience on the election bill? What about those Conservative senators? Why have they come up with some amendments to the bill? What does that tell us? Joining me now from Toronto, Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of International Trade, Erin O'Toole, is sitting beside the NDP critic for democratic reform, Craig Scott, who recently called senators clowns, and we'll get to that, for their proposed amendments, and Winnipeg Liberal Deputy Leader Kevin Lambrew's here. Let me start with Mr. Scott. Mr. Scott, you had pretty strong words. The Conservative senators proposed some amendments to the Fair Elections Act, and you said these people are clowns. Why the strong language on their amendments?
Well, frankly, the ultimate effect of what they've done is they basically covered the field with a few very minor amendments, two of which are actually fairly important, the rest aren't, compared to the totality of what's in the bill. And they've served to create a very new dynamic, even before our committee has finished all our witnesses. And the way they've done it was slapdash, it was done in a hurry, it was done in less than 7 days, and it was all done, frankly, in concert with the PMO. So when they try to claim that they're engaging in sober second thought, using this as an example, I thought it was highly appropriate to let people know that they were actually playing games.
Erin, let me talk about this, because there have been a lot of accusations that amidst a firestorm of backlash against the Fair Elections Act, suddenly the Conservative senators came out with some amendments. A lot of the critics, like Mr. Scott, have said they're really just changing some issues, but not the substance of the criticism. Suddenly, Pierre Poilievre, the minister in charge, was on this program on CBC Radio's The House saying, look, I'm open to these amendments. The first time we've heard that. Is this just what some might call allowable dissent, making small amendments to show that you're listening, but fundamentally not changing the substance of the act?
Well, just last week, Craig and I debated the Senate at the Monk Centre along with Stéphane Dion, and he didn't use such strong language there. Listen, I think the Senate committee has provided some comment, and as I've said even on your program before, Evan, the minister has suggested that he's open to amendment, and as long as they meet the spirit with what is trying to be accomplished with the legislation. I heard Senator From on the House, on your radio program on the weekend, talking about her perspective on trying to make sure that we instill confidence with reform of our electoral system, which Mr. Neufeld in his report called for after the problems demonstrated in the 2011 election. And so the bill has been a strong effort to make sure that confidence can be brought to the administration of elections. And committee is still hearing. So I think the Senate has weighed in with their pre-study comments. I think you will likely see the Proc committee, including maybe Craig and his party's participation in some amendments, and that will then go to the House. So I think we've got to keep the rhetoric down a little bit and look at some meaningful amendments.
I would love to keep the rhetoric, and there's no question we like a good spirited debate. Although, to be fair, the guy that's ratcheted up the rhetoric more than anyone is the minister, Pierre Poilievre, who accused, the CEO of Elections Canada, Mark Mayran, of being power hungry and not transparent. I guess my question is, can you explain to Canadians why the minister seems more open to suggestions from Conservative senators than from the people who have the independent officers of Parliament who run elections? He seemed not open to any of their suggestions, but open to these. What does that tell us?
Well, I think the minister has said, let's hear what the Procedure and House Affairs Committee comes up with. And they have been sitting, because I've been joining Craig and others on that committee quite a bit in the last month, virtually around the clock.
I have to say, raising the level as well. Thank you so much.
Well, they've been hearing witnesses after witnesses, some with some of the exact same concerns, some others raising some novel ideas, and even Mr. Neufeld's time, he brought up a couple of ways that the concerns about vouching and the high error rates that those cause could be addressed. So I think the minister is going to look at the totality of that. The Senate has also provided some comments. And I think, look, as long as we can ensure that this update, this much overdue update to our election system, to address everything from robocalls through to the high error problems with registration and vouching, take into consideration making sure that Canadians can have confidence in the system addressing the realities of modern campaigning.
All right, Kevin Lammer, what do you make of that? Now the door is open to amendments, specifically these 9 recommendations from the Conservative Senate. Wait, hang on, Kevin Lammer, I don't think we can hear you. We got an audio problem with Kevin Lammer. I think we got you now, Kevin.
You got me now?
Go ahead. Start
Wonderful.
Again.
I guess ultimately, Evan, seeing is believing. What we know today is that we have an election bill that originates more so out of the Prime Minister's office than anywhere else. And to date, with the exception of what we saw taking place in the Senate, any sort of idea for change, no matter where it's coming from, the Chief Electoral Officer, the Commission of Elections, other Sheila Fraser, opposition parties, no matter where it's coming from, the minister takes great attempts at discouraging, at putting them down, providing no credibility. Now with the Senate, what we have seen, it seems to have maybe cracked open a door here, potentially. But let's recognize the reality of it is that there's still, even with what the Senate is talking about, we're still not seeing the substantial changes that are absolutely critical in order to improve this legislation.
I mean, let's just hear. They
an
got
open
9
mind
changes.
in the Prime Minister's
They want
office.
to get rid of the $20 fundraising loophole. They want to require homeless shelters and senior homes to provide letters of attestation as a form of identification, among other things. What's the problem with those?
Which is all great, but what we really need is Elections Canada to be able to compel witnesses. This is something in which Elections Canada, remember we had tens of thousands of phone calls all over our country about robocalls.
But to be fair,
We've had
Mr.
the
Lammer,
in-and-out scandal.
that would be a new power. They're not changing the system. I mean, that's even beyond the status quo.
Right.
Why is that
but
the
Evan,
red line for you?
What that would be doing, Evan, is it would be giving Elections Canada something that already independent election authorities have in other jurisdictions. At the end of the day, what I take from what happened in the Senate is that we believe, and we have always believed, you know, Mr. Trudeau was the first one to talk about having an open vote on this, a free vote inside the House of Commons.
Just
for
like
the
his
first
open
time,
nomination.
Patient here. The first opportunity here is now we know that there are Conservatives that do not support this legislation, which reinforces what Mr. Trudeau was trying to get, really says that we can do this. We can force Mr. Harper to make changes that are of substance that will make the legislation possible if he would give us that free vote.
Okay,
we need that free vote.
Okay, the Liberals want a free. Mr. Scott, what's that? I know you're trying to convince backbenchers, conservative backbenchers, to kind of switch sides on this. I don't know. You know, I'm sure you have the, desire to do that on all sorts of issues. But what's the next step here? There are amendments on the table. What do you think would be acceptable for you?
Well, I think we should remain focused on what we're trying to do. We're not expecting actually all that many serious amendments. The bill is going to stay in the territory unless something radically unexpected happens. It's going to stay in the territory of needing to be withdrawn so we can start fresh. That's what I said in the letter I sent to the minister, and that's what we're trying to persuade various Conservative MPs of. We're not saying kill the bill forever. We're saying it's got to be withdrawn. We've got to start over with a more consultative process.
Any luck, by the way? Can you
yeah.
give us any luck? Okay, who's on the fence?
I'm not going to, Michael Chung is on the fence because he's open-minded about this. He actually hasn't decided how he's going to vote, and Michael can tell you more about his own process by which he's going to decide. And basically what happens in committee will be very important.
Well, can you just tell us who you're talking to? I mean, what Conservatives, Mr. Scott, are you targeting or talking to?
Well, we have a very long list. I think it's no secret that Michael Chung was from day one, and there's a reason for that. Michael has a reputation well-deserved for being, at heart, a parliamentarian and Democrat who really values the integrity of our democracy. I think it would be not unexpected if James Rajat were to hear from us fairly soon, and there are many others who will basically, this is just normal conversation at the same time. And Aaron, by the way, Aaron is somebody who I actually have come to respect a lot in this committee, and we're going to see whether or not there's substantial amendments coming out of the committee. If there aren't, this is somebody, I think, who's going to be looking at whether or not we should start over.
Listen, Evan, I think it's nice to see Craig in the Easter spirit speaking positively about myself and some of the colleagues. Look, I've talked to Michael Chung about this bill. Our caucus has a very open and wide-ranging discussion on legislation before the House all the time. And if you look at our committee, the committee's asked some very intelligent questions of the record number of people that have been appearing in front of it. I think as long as we can recognize, Evan, even the Globe and Mail on the weekend said this bill came out of nowhere. That's not the case. Canadians need to understand that this bill comes from the fact that there were serious problems reported in 2011. There was an audit that showed serious erroneous problems. We've all heard about problems with automated telephone calls. All the parties have had some issues
you realize
with
the
those.
debate
That's where it's coming from.
But the debate is not about the diagnosis, it's about the prognosis. That's been the debate. And they're saying, okay, let's deal with the problems in a different way. I got about 10 seconds here, Mr. O'Toole. Any chance the Prime Minister has a free vote in your party on this thing?
I think we're putting the cart before the horse. Committee is going to return and hear from the final witnesses, and then I would expect some possible amendments to come out of that. And I would be supportive, potentially, of some, as long as they keep with the spirit of the Act, which, Evan, is to improve and update our system, which is long overdue, and we need to ensure there's confidence in our results.
I got to leave it there. Aaron O'Toole, Craig Scott, Kevin Lamoureux. In the Easter spirit, we always have a good, respectful debate. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, Evan.
Thank you.